Rose, I have to tell you something embarrassing right now before we even start today's episode properly.
Oh no, what did you say this time?
Years ago, in a real interview with a real manager sitting across from me, I looked her straight in the eye and said, I am agree with new challenges.
You actually said that? Out loud? In an interview?
Word for word. And the strange part is, I felt so confident when I said it. In my head, it sounded completely correct.
That's exactly why today's episode matters so much. Because the mistakes that feel the most natural to us are usually the ones we repeat the most without even noticing.
So today, we're going to open up some of our most embarrassing English mistakes, the interview disasters, the awkward first dates, even a dinner with someone's parents that almost went very wrong.
And by the end, you'll understand exactly why these mistakes happen and how to finally stop making them yourself.
And trust me, we're not judging anyone today, because as you just heard, I've made these mistakes myself in front of real people in real moments that actually mattered. Okay, so let's go back to that interview, because there's actually more to the story than just that one sentence. This was for an internship at a small marketing company in Manchester, and I really wanted that job. I had practiced my introduction in the mirror for 2 nights before. I had a printed copy of my resume in a folder. I even ironed my shirt twice because I was so nervous.
You ironed it twice? That's a serious level of nervous.
Completely serious. So I walk in, I shake the manager's hand, everything is going fine, and then she asks the question every interview asks. What are your strengths? And instead of giving my nice prepared answer, my brain just froze for a second and out came, I am hardworking and I am agree with new challenges. And the moment it left my mouth, I heard it and I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't figure out what.
What did she do?
She just gave this small, polite smile, the kind of smile that says, I understood you, but that wasn't quite right. And she moved on to the next question like nothing happened. But I sat there for the rest of the interview with this sentence replaying in my head, I am agree, like a song stuck on repeat.
See, this is such a classic mistake because in so many languages, adjectives need a helping verb before them, so your brain just copies that pattern into English. But agree, in English, is already a complete verb by itself. You don't need am in front of it. You simply say, I agree. Or, if you want to sound even more natural, I'm open to new challenges.
I actually didn't learn that until weeks later when my English teacher corrected it in a completely unrelated homework assignment. And I remember feeling this wave of embarrassment thinking about that interview all over again.
Did you get the internship, by the way?
I did not.
Jack!
I'm joking. I actually did get it, but I always wondered if that sentence made her hesitate for a second. Anyway, my story is nothing compared to what happened to me on the phone once, which honestly still makes me laugh when I think about it.
Wait, that's supposed to be my story.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Tell your phone story.
So I had a phone interview for a customer service position, and I was sitting in my kitchen trying to sound professional while also trying to not let my cat walk across my keyboard. And the interviewer asked me how long I had worked at my previous company. Very confidently, I said, I am working there since 3 years.
The classic since versus for mistake.
Exactly. And it's such a small difference, but it completely changes how natural the sentence sounds. Since is used for a specific starting point in time, like since 2019 or since January or since I moved here. For is used for a length or duration of time, like for 3 years or for 6 months. So the correct sentence should have been, I have been working there for 3 years, using the present perfect continuous because the action started in the past and is still continuing right now.
That tense genuinely confuses so many learners because it's connecting something that started before to something that's still true today, and a lot of languages simply don't have that exact grammar structure, so people try to force their own language's pattern onto English instead.
And the funny thing is, the interviewer didn't correct me either. She just kept going. But afterward, I felt this itch in my brain, like I knew something was slightly off, and I kept replaying the sentence for the rest of the day, trying to figure out exactly what I had done wrong.
It's strange how our brains do that, isn't it? We say something wrong, and even if nobody corrects us, some part of us just knows.
Completely. Speaking of moments where you just know something went wrong, tell me about that first date story you mentioned earlier. I've heard bits of it before, but never the whole thing.
Oh, this one is genuinely painful. So, I had been talking to this woman for a few weeks, and we finally went on our first proper date, dinner at a nice little Italian restaurant. And at some point, she asked about my family, so I started telling her about my sister, who is married to a doctor. Except what I actually said was, my sister is married with a doctor.
Married with instead of married to?
Yes, and she paused for just a second, this tiny pause, and then asked, wait, married with him or married to him? And I honestly didn't understand the difference at that moment, so I just repeated married with a doctor even more confidently, which somehow made it worse.
That must have been such an awkward pause at the table.
It really was. Later, my teacher explained that in English, you're always married to someone, never married with someone, because with makes it sound like two people are doing something together, like they're working with a doctor or traveling with a doctor, not that they're actually a married couple.
Prepositions are honestly one of the trickiest parts of English speaking because they almost never translate directly from one language to another. You can understand every single grammar rule perfectly and still get the preposition wrong because they're really more like individual vocabulary you have to memorize one at a time.
Exactly, and it's not only married to, there's also depends on, but so many learners, myself included, say depends of instead.
I did that one for years, honestly. It depends of the weather instead of it depends on the weather. I remember my teacher circling it in bright red pen so many times in my homework that eventually I just started saying the correct sentence out loud to myself over and over until it finally felt natural in my mouth.
That's actually such a smart method, and I think it's something a lot of learners skip. They memorize the rule in their head, like depends is followed by on, but they never physically say the full sentence enough times for it to feel automatic when they're speaking.
That's exactly why I think real practice matters so much more than just reading grammar explanations. Which reminds me, can we talk about the whole bored and boring confusion? Because I feel like every single learner makes this mistake at least once.
Oh, please, because I have a genuinely embarrassing story about that one too.
Of course you do.
So I was at a party, and this one guy was telling an incredibly long, detailed story about his car. Every single part of the engine, every repair he had ever done, going on, and I leaned over to my friend and whispered, I'm so boring right now.
You told your friend that you, personally, as a human being, were boring.
Exactly what I said. I meant to say I'm so bored right now, meaning the story itself was making me feel bored. But I'm boring means that I am not an interesting person to be around. My friend just laughed and said, well, you kind of are actually, as a joke, but it took me a solid few seconds to even understand what had just happened, and by then I was laughing too, mostly out of confusion.
That's the classic ed and ing adjective mistake, and honestly, it's everywhere. Words like bored and boring, interested and interesting, tired and tiring, they all follow the exact same pattern. The ed form describes how a person feels, and the ing form describes the thing or person causing that feeling. So the story is boring, and because the story is boring, you feel bored.
That explanation genuinely would have saved me a lot of embarrassment at that party. But speaking of embarrassing moments in front of other people, can I tell you about the time I completely destroyed a simple sentence in front of my girlfriend's parents?
I need this story immediately.
So we're having dinner, very formal, very quiet. Her father is a serious man who barely smiles, and he asked me where I had traveled recently. I wanted to say that I had visited Paris the previous year, so confidently I said, I have visited Paris last year.
Ah, mixing present perfect with a specific past time marker.
Exactly that. Last year is a specific finished point in the past, so you cannot use have visited, which is present perfect. You have to switch to simple past. I visited Paris last year. present perfect is used for experiences without a specific time attached, like simply saying, I have visited Paris, full stop, no time mentioned, meaning at some point in my life, whenever that was.
That really is one of the trickiest rules in all of English grammar because both tenses are technically talking about the past. But the second you add a specific time word, like yesterday, last year, or in 2019, you have to switch over to simple past.
Her father didn't correct me because he's very polite, but I noticed her mother glance at him for just a second, and I felt my whole face turning red at the dinner table. After that dinner, I actually went home and wrote out 10 sentences using both tenses correctly just so it would finally stick permanently in my brain.
That's such a smart way to fix a mistake, actually. Writing your own personal example sentences instead of just reading a rule in a textbook. I do something similar myself. Whenever I catch myself making a mistake, I try to create 3 brand new sentences using the correct form, but about my own real life, so my brain connects the grammar to something that actually matters to me.
Honestly, I think that's a better method than mine because you're personalizing it while I was just copying a pattern.
I don't think one is better, really. I think they work well together. You practiced by repeating a fixed structure until it became automatic, and I practiced by creating personal meaning around the grammar. Different brains probably need different methods, and that's completely fine.
That's fair, actually. I hadn't thought about it that way.
Now, can I admit one more mistake of mine? This one isn't really grammar, it's more of a vocabulary mistake, but it caused a whole misunderstanding at work.
Please, go ahead.
So I once told my manager that I needed to discuss about the new project with the team, and she gently said, "You mean discuss the new project?" And I genuinely didn't understand what she meant, because in my head, discuss needed the word about after it, the exact same way talk about or speak about does.
Right, but discuss is actually what we call a transitive verb, meaning the idea of about is already built directly into the verb itself, so you never add it separately. You discuss something, you never discuss about something.
Exactly, and this connects to another mistake I used to make constantly, which was arrived at instead of arrived to. I used to say, we arrived to the airport at 9, when it should really be, we arrived at the airport, or we arrived in London.
Ah, yes. Arrived never takes to, it takes at for smaller specific places, like a building or a station, and in for larger places, like a city or an entire country.
These little prepositional mistakes are honestly the hardest part of speaking English for me, even now, after all these years. Grammar rules feel logical once you actually learn them, but prepositions often just feel random, and you really have to hear them repeated again and again in real conversation before they finally start to sound natural.
I completely agree. And that's actually the whole reason I believe listening to real English conversation like this podcast helps so much more than only studying grammar books alone. When you hear phrases like arrived at, depends on, and married to repeated over and over in real natural context, your brain slowly starts remembering the correct pattern without you ever consciously trying to memorize it.
You told your friend that you, personally, as a human being, were boring.
Exactly what I said. I meant to say I'm so bored right now, meaning the story itself was making me feel bored. But I'm boring means that I am not an interesting person to be around. My friend just laughed and said, well, you kind of are actually, as a joke. But it took me a solid few seconds to even understand what had just happened. And by then, I was laughing too, mostly out of confusion.
That's such a good point. And honestly, I think that's the real secret behind improving your English speaking. It's not about knowing every single grammar rule perfectly in your head. It's about hearing and repeating the correct patterns so many times that they finally become automatic, almost the exact same way a young child naturally learns their very first language.
Exactly, and that's the whole idea behind this 30-day challenge. Every single day you're hearing real English conversation, real mistakes, real corrections, and slowly, almost without realizing it, your English fluency keeps improving.
I love that. And honestly, thinking back through all these stories, your interview, my phone call, your first date, and that tense dinner with my parents, your girlfriend's parents, I genuinely think the biggest lesson today is that making mistakes is a completely normal, healthy part of learning English speaking. Nobody becomes fluent without going through moments exactly like these.
Absolutely. And honestly, I'd argue that the learners who improve the fastest are usually the ones who aren't afraid to make mistakes in the first place. If you never speak because you're scared of saying something wrong, you'll never get the real practice your brain actually needs.
That's such an important message for anyone listening right now who feels nervous about speaking English out loud. Every single mistake you make is actually proof that you're trying and proof that you're one step closer to speaking naturally and confidently.
And now that we've fully embarrassed ourselves in front of all of you, let's actually break down these expressions properly so you can start using them correctly starting today.
Okay, let's slow down now and really look at the expressions we use today, because you heard them naturally inside our stories, and now we're going to explain them clearly, one by one.
Let's start with mine since I started us off. I agree. Remember, I said I am agree, and that's wrong because agree is already a complete verb on its own. You never need am before it. The correct form is simply I agree or I agree with you. A common mistake learners make is adding am, is, or are before it, copying a pattern from their own language. A more natural, slightly stronger alternative is I'm on board with that, which native speakers often use in casual conversation.
Next is the since versus for mistake. Remember I said, I have been working there since 3 years? Since is used with a specific starting point, like since 2019, since Monday, or since I moved here. For is used with a length of time, like for 3 years, for 2 weeks, or for a long time. The correct sentence is, I have been working there for 3 years. A common mistake is mixing these two up completely. So a helpful trick is, if you can count it, like 3 years or 6 months, use for. If it's a fixed point, like a year or a day, use since.
Then we have married to, not married with. You're always married to a person, never married with a person. With makes it sound like you're doing an activity together, not that you're actually a couple. A common mistake is learners assuming with works because it means together, but English simply doesn't follow that logic here.
And depends on, not depends of. This one trips up almost everyone at some point. It depends on the weather. It depends on you. It depends on the situation. The mistake usually comes from translating directly from another language where a different preposition might be used. A simple fix is repeating the full phrase depends on out loud several times until it feels automatic in your mouth.
Next, the bored versus boring mistake, which honestly might be my favorite one to explain because it's so visual. If something causes a feeling, it takes the ing ending, like boring, interesting, or tiring. If you experience that feeling, it takes the ed ending, like bored, interested, or tired. So a movie is boring, and because of that, you feel bored. A lecture is interesting, and because of that, you feel interested. The common mistake is using ing to describe yourself, which accidentally says something completely different than what you meant.
After that, we talked about present perfect versus simple past with my I have visited Paris last year mistake. Remember, if there's a specific time word like yesterday, last year, or in 2019, you must use simple past. I visited Paris last year. Present perfect, I have visited Paris, is used without a specific time, meaning at some point in your life. A common mistake is mixing these two, especially because many languages use one single tense for both meanings.
We also covered discuss, not discuss about. Discuss already includes the meaning of about inside the verb itself. So you say, let's discuss the project, never let's discuss about the project. This is one of the most common mistakes even intermediate learners make, because verbs like talk about and speak about do use about, so learners assume discuss follows the same pattern.
And finally, arrived at and arrived in, not arrived to. Use at for smaller specific places like arrived at the airport, arrived at the station, arrived at the hotel. Use in for larger places like arrived in London, arrived in Japan. Arrived to is simply never correct in English, no matter the situation.
That's 8 really useful expressions, all pulled directly from real mistakes we actually made in real moments of our lives, which I think makes them much easier to remember than expressions from a textbook.
Completely agree. And I think that's really the whole point of today's episode. These aren't random vocabulary words. They're mistakes that happen constantly in real English speaking situations. Interviews, dates, dinners, phone calls, the exact situations you'll probably face yourself.
Let's quickly go through some incorrect and correct versions together so the difference is really clear in your mind.
First one. Incorrect. I am agree with you. Correct. I agree with you. Why? Because agree is a complete verb and never needs a helping verb like am before it.
Incorrect. I am working here since 5 years. Correct. I have been working here for 5 years. Why? Because since needs a specific starting point, while for needs a length of time. And the sentence needs present perfect continuous, not simple present.
Incorrect. My brother is married with a teacher. Correct. My brother is married to a teacher. Why? Because English always uses married to, never married with, even though it might feel logical to translate it that way.
Incorrect. It depends of your schedule. Correct. It depends on your schedule. Why? Because depends always pairs with on in English, regardless of what preposition your own language might use.
Incorrect. I'm so boring. This class is too long. Correct. I'm so bored. This class is too long. Why? Because bored describes your feeling, while boring would describe you as a person, which changes the entire meaning.
Incorrect. I have visited Rome last summer. Correct. I visited Rome last summer. Why? Because a specific past time word like last summer requires simple past, not present perfect.
Incorrect. Can we discuss about this later? Correct. Can we discuss this later? Why? Because discuss already means talk about. So adding about again is unnecessary and incorrect.
Incorrect. We arrived to the hotel very late. Correct. We arrived at the hotel very late. Why? Because arrived pairs with at or in, never with to, no matter how natural to might feel.
Now here's today's comment challenge, and we really want to hear from you. Think about a mistake you've made in English, maybe in an interview, on a date, at work, or even just chatting with a friend.
Write your mistake in the comments below using full English sentences and tell us what happened, how you felt, and what you learned from it, just like we did today.
Don't worry about making another mistake while you write your comment. That's actually part of the whole learning process, and we genuinely love reading every single comment you leave us.
This is such a great way to practice real English speaking and writing. So please take just 2 minutes right now to share your story with our whole community. Thank you, friends, for listening to our today's episode. I hope you learned something from it. Don't miss tomorrow's episode, Day 8 of the B1 to B2 Challenge. Subscribe now so you don't fall behind. See you tomorrow, friends.